Welcome to how B Corp standards are reshaping business impact in Europe and beyond. Um, my name is Irving Chan-Gomes. I work with BLab. I could tell you about my function, but beyond that, I'm also more than anything just a person. And probably like many, if not all of you, I'm a person that is, yes, worried about the challenges that lay ahead, not only of our countries, but our species and like our planet, but also one that is convinced and committed to be part of the solution. So before we get started and talk about some really exciting developments about the role of businesses, I want us to take a second to just like take it all in. We're in this beautiful, beautiful space. I'm from Mexico. If you had told my 8-year-old boy person that I would be here speaking with these amazing people in front of all these amazing change makers, I would be like, you're crazy. So take it all in. And importantly, look around you. Look around the other people that are in this room who, like you, are trying to be part of the change that we all need to see. Recognize each other. And it's been said multiple times that that an image can say more than 1,000 words. So in that spirit, we want to really share with you a short trailer about an upcoming film series that highlights some of the real impact that some of the B Corps in the global community are having in the movement. So if you can pay attention to our screen.
Eu amo você, terra minha amada, abençoa.
What's important to us is knowing where the ingredients come from.
There's the idea that that resilience and that patience is in the people here. It's a mindset, I think.
I'm young enough and stupid enough to give it a go.
We know that we work in an industry that has an environmental impact.
We have to look at what we've got here and protect that for the future.
I think being inclusive is not a grand thing.
My reflection is, how can we do it better next year?
You actually get to have a tangible effect on people's lives.
Even amidst all of the complexities and challenges, I believe that businesses should and can be positive change agents.
So this is an upcoming series that hopefully you'll be able to check out in the next couple of weeks. But so as the video was showing, this is about like the impact that businesses can have in society. So as I invited you to look at each other and recognize that we are one with another, so can businesses. So for today, I'm really excited to have this panel conversation with the people that I get to call my colleagues around exactly or precisely how we can recognize one another within the business sector so that businesses can benefit all people, communities, and the planet. So with that, I'm honored to introduce Brigitta Nemes. She is our senior manager of environmental and governance standards. So she was pivotal in the development of the new standards around those impact areas. She has a ton of experience in this space, coming from big multinationals such as Danone, as well as working with other organizations around supply chain and environmental standards. Next, I have Augustin Boulot, who is the executive director of BLab France. He comes actually also from experiences working with both multinational company Telefónica, as well as on the French political space and around democratic innovation, including and sorry, my French is a little rusty, including the Convention des Entreprises pour le Climat. And lastly, I have Clay Brown, who is the co-lead executive director at BLab Global, who has been in charge of really tasking and evolving and scaling our standards, products, and programs, including B Corp certification. He has some experience working also with other standards organizations, such as Fairtrade USA, Flowcert, and the Fairtrade Foundation. So today we're gonna hopefully take you on a journey from like really big picture thinking about what is the role of businesses in society, going really a bit more specific into how they actually can take a concrete action today, especially in the climate and nature space, and then hopefully go back out a little bit more, back out, yeah. So I wanna actually start with Clay, thinking about, you know, like the B Corp movement and its journey today. We have around 10,000 companies in around 100 countries. So Clay, how can you tell us a bit more? How did we get here, and how have the standards evolved over time to really meet the challenge to where businesses need to be to respond to the global problems that we're facing?
Yeah, thanks, Irving. Nice to see so many people here today. Yeah, as you said, the B Corp movement is now over around 10,000 B Corps globally. We've been trying to do this work for about 20 years, and during that time, we've constantly been on a journey of continuous improvement. Just in the same way that we believe that business has to change, and to change means to continuously improve, we've been trying to do the same thing at B Lab. And so our standards have been evolving over the last 20 years. This is the 7th version of our standards. Brigitta knows how much work goes into a standard revision process. It's a very extensive and collaborative piece of work that we do, not just by ourselves in B Lab, but really collectively and collaboratively with the B Corp community and with other organizations who are working to change the way that businesses operate for the better. I think our most recent standards revision process, we had over 26,000 pieces of feedback, and it took us around 4 years to do this work. But I think the core piece that we need to keep remembering is that in order to, for businesses to create positive impact, we have to continuously be evolving the way that we do that. The world is not the same as it was 20 years ago. When we started 20 years ago, B Lab was really trailblazing and was really the only thing out there saying what it means to be a business as a force for good. The world's been changing, the dynamics in the environment have been changing, and there's been so many more organizations, look around us right now, that are trying to help businesses be a force for good. And so one of the most important things I think in the evolution of this standard is that we're not operating by ourselves anymore. We've actually developed a standard that is truly aligned with many other international frameworks, whether that be regulations, whether that be voluntary reporting schemes, whether that be other standards and certification systems like Fair Trade or GRI or SBTI. And so we believe we are now part of a much broader ecosystem that we've helped to create. We also believe that it takes an ecosystem for businesses to be able to become a force for good. So we're certainly not in this alone. Our standards themselves, though, have gone through a very big change this last time. It's not simply an upgrade. It's actually a full reimagining of what we believe it means to be a sustainable business in 2025 and beyond. It addresses the most important and most pressing social and environmental issues of our time, and it's really a blueprint for how businesses can galvanize their actions to create change, not just as an individual business, but actually as a collective of businesses. And so some of you that may know the B Corp movement very well know that our previous standards were based on a scoring system where companies had to achieve a score of 80 points. And what that meant is that companies could be really strong on the social side and maybe weaker on environment, or strong on environment and not so strong on governance. But what we've done now is we believe it's time to bring a challenge to the B Corp community and a challenge to all businesses to say that actually you have to perform high in all areas of sustainability. This is a holistic impact standard that challenges businesses to do good across 7 key impact topics. And we believe that by doing that, we're raising the bar for businesses, not just for B Corps, but for all businesses. And what that helps us do is create a more credible and a more vocal B Corp community that can speak out together collectively about the challenges that they are facing in their business, but also the challenges that the world's facing. And we were very pleased to have a chance to launch this standard just about 2 weeks ago, and I hope some of you had a chance to see it. If you haven't, please go check it out. It's a great piece of work, and we're really proud of what we've done.
Thank you, Clay. And to bring it actually, like we talked about, like there's about 10,000 companies, 100 countries. Let's focus on one. We're in France. So, Augustin, my next question is for you, actually. You have experience actually growing this community, which I think is a core element of what you were saying, Clay, that it's not just a certification. It's also a community that it's part of a broader impact ecosystem. So, Augustin, from your experience growing this here in this country, how has this happened? And more importantly, how do you think the B Corp movement and the B Corp community contributes to that wider impact ecosystem?
Thank you, Irving, for the question. If we look at France, but we could have taken a number of other countries across Europe, across the world. In the last 5 years, we've grown the B Corp community from just under about 100 B Corps to today over 500 B Corps. So we've multiplied by 5 the number of B Corp certified companies in France in the last 5 years. And I think what's really important is we're not just in here to certify companies. And I'd like to share two aspects of what we do in our movement that I think go beyond just the number of B Corp certified companies. You touched upon one of them, Irving, by saying it's not just a certification, it's also a community of businesses. And I think a lot of the companies joining this movement are joining not just for the certification, but really for this very collaborative community mindset where they can challenge each other, talk to peers. I think all of us together in this room, we all recognize that the sustainability path for a company is extremely difficult. A lot of people usually find themselves alone, fighting for these types of changes within their companies. And the fact that they can connect with peers, companies on similar sectors, industries, geographical areas is a really powerful item within the B Corp movement. So one is really strengthening this ambition of not just being a certification, but of really embodying this community aspect. And then another piece of data that we feel is really important for us is beyond those 500 plus companies that are certified in France, we have over 10,000, possibly almost 15,000 organizations that are using our measurement tool to manage, improve, and give a framework to the way that they measure their impact. And I think that's almost the most important aspect of what we feel we can do, is that if you have within 15,000 or so organizations, people within companies who are grasping the topics around impact, who have that knowledge of what it is to measure their impact on their governance, on their environmental impact, on social topics, that's a really powerful, it creates an army of people who can then go knock on doors of their executive committees, on their leadership teams, to say, this is a really important thing that we're doing. We don't have to be certified. It's not just about certification, but we need to be conscious of these topics. We need to be measuring what really matters. And so that, I think, is a really important way of growing this movement, is that keeping the interest of practitioners within companies who are measuring their impact with our tools. And then I think the final thing that I would say, in the way we've grown the movement in France, and again, I think we could have taken any area in the world where B-Lab is present, is we have a very strong willingness and I think position of humility to say there's no way we can do these kinds of changes alone. And so in France, we've tried to build very deep connections with other business networks who are maybe in a slightly different space than we are, but we can feel that we can work together. And I think Change Now is a lot about collaboration. There was a talk about coalitions earlier on, and I think that's a really important way of scaling the B Corp movement, is to do it with being mindful of those around us and those who can actually help us scale, those who are using our standards, and then at the end of the day, certifying for those who want to go all the way to certification. But yeah, that's, I guess, how we've scaled the movement in France. But again, I think we could have looked at lots of different countries where B-Lab is present and who've taken similar paths.
Thank you, Augustin. I think you brought up a really, really, really important point, which is about our standards are not just for certification. The idea, and I think in our wildest dreams, is that every businesses will at least aspire to behave as a B Corp. And we want to get into like, what does this mean for businesses when we're looking into climate action, for example, and circularity. So before we get to Brigitta, which I'm really excited to talk about, I want to actually like ask all of you. We're talking about B Corps. So if you can raise your hand, I'm going to ask 3 questions. How familiar are you with B Corp certification? So if you are very familiar, maybe you're part of a B Corp, maybe you have already gone through the process, or you know what we're talking about, please raise your hand. Okay, thank you. If you are somehow familiar, you've heard of it, but you're not entirely sure what it all means, and some of these make sense and some of it doesn't, raise your hand. Okay. And lastly, if you have not heard of B Corp and what this is, raise your hand. No shame on it. Okay.
That would have been very different 5 years ago.
Which is amazing. It speaks to your work, actually. Amazing, great. So I'm glad at least you have some sense of like what the B Corp certification stands for. But in that sense, Brigitta, I'm really excited because in this new iteration of the standards, there is a greater emphasis on climate, environmental protection, stewardship, and circularity. Why was this the case? And more importantly, what do you expect that those 10,000 companies that we have, for example, what will be the impact that these new standards, that these new requirements will have on that community and also beyond into others that use the standard as a way to manage their impact?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, I think we all know that recent years have been warmest on record. And 2024 was the warmest year so far. So I don't think I need to go into the justification of why climate and climate crisis is such a critical topic today. We have also transgressed 6 of the 9 planetary boundaries. At the same time, there is a growing regulatory complexity that impacts businesses and also increasing pressure to retreat from climate commitments. In this context, in this global context, the new B Corp standards show a clear path for sustained commitment. So I wanted to start with that. More concretely, what we ask in the new standards is that now all companies need to take climate action. Large companies need to have validated science-based targets. It's the moment now. If you want to be a leader, then this is what it means. Now, I talked about science-based targets for climate, which is becoming more and more common as well. But there are also science-based targets for nature, so for other areas as well. Those are still in their infancy, but what we try to do with the B Corp standards is to make it a little bit more bite-sized for companies to contribute to staying within planetary boundaries. So we know that if we are talking about impacts like biodiversity or water, those are inherently context-based and local. That's one of the main reasons why in the new standards we ask companies to actually conduct an assessment to understand their actual and potential impacts on nature. Based on this assessment, they will then have to define a strategy and also implement it. So it's not just about strategy level, you've done it, but we also want to see progress and actual evaluation of the effectiveness of your strategy as a company and be transparent about it. If it was not effective, what are you going to do to course correct it and update your strategy? Now, I also want to bring in a little bit the European context as well, because I think since we are in Europe, it's also important to mention the European Sustainability Reporting Directive or standards, which aim to standardize and strengthen sustainability reporting within the EU. When we developed the new standards, it was also with this in mind. So how can we ensure interoperability with legislation, but also with other frameworks, which Claire already mentioned before, but I would like to emphasize that, that we list now in the new standards data and information that would meet companies' obligations with these reporting legislation or standards. And we want to basically make sure that companies have to duplicate their efforts. So how can the documentation process be simplified? So that's also the reason why we elevated interoperability within our standards.
Thank you, Brigitta. I think there is an element which is important to highlight here that is about, like there's so much collaboration that needs to happen, obviously in our standards development process, to simplify what companies need to do so they can focus on that impact more with like laser focus. And then I think there's also that element of community. And I want to bring this back to you, Augustin, because we talked about new standards. This is about raising the bar. I personally don't feel any sense of doubt that if any group in society is going to be able to do anything, it's about businesses. So, I mean, they've been really good at maximizing profit. So thinking about that, I'm also reminded, like, we already have a community of B Corps. We already have companies that are managing this impact using our tools, using that of other partners or other standards organizations. So even though it feels challenging, I think it's a good reminder that we also are not doing this alone. We certainly aren't. So Augustin, going back to like the sense of community, what examples exist already from France, Europe, or like, different communities that and how do you anticipate the new standards will actually galvanize even more collective action with these communities, both within the B Corp certified community, but also beyond?
I think I'll start by saying that when a company achieves B Corp certification, they have to sign a declaration of interdependence. Now, it might seem a little crazy or just purely symbolic, but it's actually really powerful. It means a lot for those companies who join the movement. And it says very clearly that companies who join the movement commit to working together more closely, doing business together more closely. And I think doing business together as a community, we shouldn't be shy of doing that, because if the more B Corps we have doing business together, the more good it will create out of them working together. So that declaration of interdependence is a really important part of companies joining the movement. And we see tons of examples of companies collaborating together. We have a European-wide initiative called the Beauty Coalition, for example, where we have different companies from the beauty sector who've come together to tackle issues that they're all facing on packaging, on cosmetics formulas. And I think that's a really powerful example of sometimes competing companies coming together to tackle industry challenges that they're facing. We have companies who, in more difficult times, have decided to share infrastructure or share resources to help each other out. We have companies who have collectively decided to tackle carbon emissions and who are joining as a cohort programs to more aggressively reduce their carbon emissions. So we have tons of examples of that collaboration and companies coming together. And when you see the difficulty of the challenges that are ahead of us, and for companies to tackle those challenges, the one thing that comes out every time is, and it might sound really simple what I'm going to say, but doing it together with peers makes it easier, makes it more comfortable, and makes it obviously more powerful. And I think that's why in our new standards, I'd say maybe one of the aspects that excites me the most in the new topics is this new topic, entirely new topic around collective action and coalitions, where we will be requiring certified companies to have commitments on collective action and joining coalitions, not just to serve their own business needs. So, joining collectively R&D to look at one's own product, for example, won't be enough to satisfy that requirement. Companies will have to come together, if we're talking about R&D, to solve industry-related problems or shared problems, and I think that's a really powerful tool in our new standards to help companies make that shift into being able to tackle problems that concern the company to being able to tackle problems together that will concern a wider industry or a wider geographic region. So yeah, I'm very excited about that aspect of our new standards.
Thank you, Augustin. I think going on that thread of how there's many other aspects of our new standards that companies will be required, there's a third one that I like to mention. It's actually part of Brigitta's title, which is the governance piece. And of course, all of that we've been talking about has been around like voluntary action by companies. I think oftentimes we can think of these values of interdependence and like wanting to work with each other as something that is nice, but like it might not always like resonate in the business sector more directly. So there's also like that element of governance that is really important as to how companies can operate within the ways that they function. So Brigitta, can you tell us why not only I think it's important but critical that companies put an emphasis into that governance aspect of their work, and how does that enable climate action, environmental action, social action?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I can also bring in here the stakeholder governance, which is really something that the B Corp certification elevates, because we need to make sure that businesses consider the interest of all stakeholders, not just shareholders, right? So that includes the community workers, and if we are talking about climate, the environment as a whole as well. So I actually invite everyone to look into the purpose and stakeholder governance impact topic. But what I would like to highlight from there is that we put more emphasis on practical actions, how the company can actually translate stakeholder governance into concrete practices. Because it's really critical that companies in their decision making consider the interest of all stakeholders and the environment as well. So when a company makes decisions about a new product line or relocating, how can you also consider biodiversity impacts or climate impact? So upfront. At the same time, it's also about governance, so who has accountability. So it's also very, very important that there is oversight. So if there is a strategy, who has oversight? Does the highest level of governance in the company have oversight about the implementation of the certain strategy and also the stakeholder consideration? So these are, I think, critical elements when we talk about climate action and related environmental strategies.
Amazing. And I think I want to go back to you, Clay, now. When we think about, like what is happening in the world, like the challenges that lay ahead, but also like from your vantage point around, we have this growing community, we have this new set of standards, we have all these programs that hopefully encourage companies to take action, to get on that pathway. We're at a perhaps critical year more than ever. And looking into 2030 as this milestone where there's so many things we want and need probably to accomplish by. So what do you see is the future of the movement and its impact with that timeline in mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I think it's important that we're clear. Climate change is real. Social problems are existing around the world. We have growing inequality. We have poverty. We have income disparity. And business is the problem. Business, therefore, has to be part of the solution. I think we need to start with that basic premise. And so what we're trying to do is to create a guide and a pathway for how business can be part of the solution. So we are where we are today. We've developed a new standard. That standard is describing what we believe, based on our consultation, our research, and our 20 years of experience shows, about what it means to be a business as a force for good. And so what we want to be doing now is that we want to start changing three things really. The first thing is we need to change the behavior of businesses. Businesses need to act differently, and we have a group of 10,000 B Corps that are already doing it, and we're going to continue growing. And that group of businesses that can demonstrate that it's possible to do business differently becomes a really important asset, not only for us, but for the world at large. Because that group of businesses that shows that it's possible to do business differently can then start to tell the story about what their role is in society. So we have to think differently about the role of business in society. It needs to go beyond profit, and it needs to have an emphasis on the purpose. What is the purpose of a business in society? Not just individual businesses, but the collective purpose of business. Business is not here just to create wealth for an economy or to create jobs. It's really to create and solve challenges that we're facing in the world today. And so by having businesses that are behaving differently, who can then change the narrative about what it means to be a business in society, we then can really start to address, I think, the most critical thing, which is the structural aspects in which our businesses operate. We have laws and regulations. We see them in Europe. They're being watered down. They're being pulled away from. And we need to correct that course. And so I think what we envision 2030 looking like is that we have more businesses who are acting differently. We have more people in the world that understand that the role of business is not just about profit, but that business has a different purpose than that in society. And we're seeing increasing laws and regulations around the world that are requiring businesses to behave more like B Corps, not as a voluntary aspect, but as a regulatory requirement. What that number will be, how many of those we will have, how successful we will be, I think time will tell. But that's effectively what we're trying to accomplish, and we think we can make large strides in all three of those areas over the next 5 years, because it's essential. We're here for a purpose. We believe it's important that the economic system change so that it prospers not just wealth, but also people and planet at the same time. So that's our ambition, that's what we're working towards, and these standards are really kind of a bedrock or a foundation in that, and collectively with our B Corp community and wider, we will continue to do that work.
I think something that is really inspiring for me and the work that you and the different teams do is precisely that sense of interdependence and like recognizing that in my view, businesses at the end of the day are nothing but a group of people. And it's hard to believe that like a group of people would not prioritize the impact that needs to happen that eventually will impact themselves. So before we wrap up, and I have a question for the three of you, we also would like to hear from all of you if you have any questions. We have about maybe like 3-4 minutes. So just, I know there's a lot of questions perhaps around like B Corps, like what is my process? How am I going to certify? Hopefully by this time you feel like you're not alone. But if you have actual tactical questions, come see us at the Accelerate Ecosystem Partner Zone. We'll be here all festival, so we can actually look specifically into your company, what it would look like, and our team can help you like better understand what's going to be that. If you have more questions around the standards, please feel free to visit bcorporation.net if you want to understand exactly what that is and what that looks like. And also, we will have a community event right after this, directly after this panel. So just putting that out there. But if there are any questions from the audience, we'd love to hear. Okay, I'll go with you first.
Thank you very much. I'm Véronique Briquet-Logier. I'm the chair of a not-for-profit for research and innovation in the nexus of climate, water, and cultural heritage. So having said that, my question is more for you, Brigitte, about the governance. How do you embark stakeholders? Because what we're doing really as a research and innovation projects is about living labs and trying to really work on the ground with the communities, but also with the businesses and also with the policymakers and all that about the governance, and how do you help businesses taking into account in their governance what you were talking about, the stakeholders engagement, and I think it's a key question for small and bigger businesses when we work on the ground with the communities. Because when we talk about cultural heritage, it can be natural, it can be tangible, it can be intangible. So it's the whole range actually, and it's the essence of the society.
Thank you for your question. Actually, a couple of things come into my mind. So regarding stakeholders in general, there are a lot of different impact topics, not just within climate, but also within purpose and stakeholder governance, but also within the social topics, also the collective action topic, that has some aspect of engaging with the company stakeholders, because it's critical. So that's why, for instance, under purpose and stakeholder governance, we ask companies that they have some kind of a mechanism in place to consider the interest of their stakeholders. This could take various different forms depending on the size or the type of company, and also on the type of stakeholder as well. Like if it's workers, maybe there is like a worker representation forum. If it's about another example could be, for instance, that you have actually one of your stakeholders on your board as well. So there could be various different forms how this mechanism could take form. Larger companies, we also ask them to actually engage their stakeholders to define their material impacts. So like a materiality assessment with all key stakeholders being engaged, so they provide input for that. If we are talking about other topics like climate action, there we also ask that in the company's strategy, it also defines how it's going to engage its stakeholders. Specifically, larger companies, we have a focus on just transition as well, because we understand that climate action or a company's climate strategy might have an impact on its stakeholders. It could be negative impact as well. So how are you going to engage your stakeholders to make sure that any negative impact is prevented or mitigated? But it's also about, if you look at the company's value chain, there might be a lot of stakeholders who are severely impacted by climate change. So it's not just your company impacting them through your transition plan, but it could be that you have a customer base or suppliers who are in an area that you know that is severely impacted by climate change. So how is your strategy considering that? So this just transition piece is also something that we have introduced for larger companies, that they have to integrate that in their strategy. And I can share more examples maybe also after the panel, but I hope it gives you a little bit of flavor that, it's very important.
Just maybe one example to add on that. We've done a bit of work within the community to gather best practices on how to include nature within governance structures. And I'm going to elevate one example, one strong example in France of a B Corp called Narcisse, who've just given a seat to nature on their board with a veto voting right. They were on the Journal Télévisé 2 weeks ago to tell this story, and it's a really interesting and innovative way to look at how you build in your various stakeholders, and in this case nature, in your governance structures, and how you give them voting rights. But yeah, we have almost 10,000 examples of innovative governance to share. So,
any other question? I'll go to the back and try to come back, just to give more.
Thank you. My name is Christopher. I was a former employee of a B Corporation in Cornwall in the UK, Leap Design for Change. Matt Hocking down there is one of your biggest fans, I think. Now I live in Copenhagen in Denmark, and looking to start up a community interest company there. It occurs to me while listening to you that certainly the experience of Leap was a retrofit of an existing organization. What kind of tools and what kind of processes can you put in place that would help someone bootstrapping something from nothing? And also, you talked a bit about maybe putting pressure on governments to actually introduce standards into the way any organization, any commercial enterprise would work within a jurisdiction. Can you put a few words to that as well?
Thanks for the question. So two things, I think. One, we have a very diverse group of companies that we work with. We work with very well-established companies who are trying to, as you say, retrofit and change how they operate, embed purpose into their business if it maybe wasn't there initially. But we also actually work, a majority of the business we work with are small and medium businesses who are effectively designing their business from day one with impact in mind. And so there's a few things we do. With our new standard, for example, the requirements vary depending on the company size. So if you're a smaller business, you can use our standard as really as a guide of saying, these are all the essential elements I need to have as a small business in order to build a business from the ground up that is addressing these important issues. We also have a very important aspect of our work that we've done for years, which is called impact business models, something we won't spend a lot of time on now, but effectively it's a description of different types of businesses that are designed and developed with impact in mind. So an example of that is a business that is designed to give 100% of their profits to charity, for example. They're designed to give business. So I think those are a couple tools that businesses could use. Your second question, sorry, I can't remember your second question now. Oh, in terms of governments, yeah. So there's a lot of examples of government and legislation happening around the world. Obviously, we have things like CSRD here, which is the reporting requirements. But actually, the UK has one of the more kind of progressive policy campaigns in our movement, which is called the Better Business Act. And the Better Business Act is a campaign of businesses and business leaders who are working to get the government of the UK to introduce a change to the company's registration laws, which effectively means that any company, when they register, has to register themselves as a business not just for profit, but they have to state what their purpose is as they register themselves as a business. So there's a few examples like that that we're working on around the world.
And maybe just to add to that, that's why it's also very important that we have this new impact topic, government affairs and collective action, because one of the 5 collective action options is actually public policy advocacy as well. So we are also promoting that through the standards, how you can influence governments to actually have legislation that's also supporting, like more sustainable or those type of legislations that can bring topics more to the forefront that are maybe pushed aside. And maybe just a last note here, because since we're also, one of our main topics is climate, that under the climate action impact topic, we also have, thank you, we also have a requirement for larger companies that they need to advocate for climate action. So either within their trade associations or with their local governments, how they are going to support ambitious climate legislation. So that's actually a requirement as well.
Having been at events before, we are out of time. So I will need to wrap up, but our team is going to be here. So if you have any questions, please come find us or find us in some of the other areas you can. Just to close us up to all of you, if you had one key takeaway solution, some action that businesses could do today to prepare for the future where business sustainability is a given, what would it be?
I wouldn't say it's one solution, but I think the moment we're going through is crying out for leadership. I think we're all practitioners within our companies and organizations, but we've seen, especially with the Trump administration coming in, we've had business leaders, CEOs who've very quickly shifted and kind of tried to get in line behind what the Trump administration is trying to do. And I think the moment we're going through is really crying out for stronger leadership. So it's not a solution, but I think it's definitely something we need. So if there are business leaders in the room or people here who have the ability to talk to CEOs and leadership teams, I think we're in dire need of stronger leadership.
I think I would just reiterate again stakeholder governance. So how your company is making sure that you have the right governance structure to consider the interest of all stakeholders, and then join forces with others and share how you do that, because I think we cannot speak enough of collective action.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I would say is any business that is an established business who hasn't asked themselves these questions, I think the most important thing to do is really start with what we call a materiality assessment, to just really understand the impacts of your business. I think that's the first thing that every business needs to do. What are the impacts that my business is having, the positive ones as well as the negative ones? I think starting there really starts to open up your eyes as to what you might need to do differently. So I guess you could use the B Corp standard as a framework if you wanted in order to do that. I think that would be a great idea as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Brigitta. Thank you, Clay. Thank you, Augustin. Thank you to all of you for being here and listening to today. Reminder, just like if you have any questions, you can find us. We have a booth. Also, you can find us at bcorporation.net to check out our new standards. And also, we have a B Corp gathering at the Community Hub happening right after this. And just to close us, just want to share a quick reflection. Something that this conversation, the idea of interdependence has brought, and also some books that I've been reading, which is that this idea of separation is an illusion. So when we started, I invited you to look at each other, not because like you're different people, but at the end of the day, we have so much more in common that we don't. So our borders, race, religion, who we love, it's all an illusion. And same with our planet, like not just with the elements that directly benefit us, but also that sustain all type of life. So next time you feel like, oh, I cannot do this because it's not part of, or it's not impacting me, know that at the end of the day, it's going to. So forgetting this, I believe is what got us to this place. So hopefully, and this is very inspiring, this is a reminder that we are one with one another. So thank you, everyone.